Let's just pretend for a second you're on a listing appointment and you're making your way towards the end of the evening and you're almost ready to ask for the commitment. And at that very critical moment, when you're about to ask, the seller pops up and asks a question. You know the question. Will you cut your commission? Now, I don't think you should be surprised. It's a pretty common question in real estate. If anything, you should be prepared. Talking about preparation, years ago, to give you an example, I had the good fortune of being the opening act for Zig Ziglar at a convention. Now, behind the main stage is a room called the green room, and that's where all the speakers go to get ready for their presentation. I was in the green room going over my notes, and Ziglar was in the green room going over his. And as literally a giant in my industry, I thought this was a tremendous opportunity for me to pick the brain of somebody who really knew what they were doing. So I said to Mr. Ziglar, Mr. Ziglar, I'm a new speaker, a new trainer, and this is going to be my profession. Could you give me a tip or two that would help me? And he said, yes. He said, I can tell you where you're going to find your success. It's at the crossroads of hard work and preparation. So the point I'm trying to make with you is, are you prepared for the question? Now, the easiest go-to is learning how to say no. When somebody says, will you cut your commission? No. But I got to tell you, it's more than the dialogue, it's the delivery. You got to deliver that word right. Like often people, I find when people ask, will you cut your commission? You feel offended. You feel like somebody has taken a swing at you. And it's normal for you to push back, but unfortunately, when you push back, you push the client away. I need you to absorb that, and I need you to be able to come back with a response that will handle it. So when somebody says, will you cut your commission? What I want you to do is go, no, any more questions? You got to roll the no in the back of your voice so it doesn't sound like it's combative, that it's you're kind of surprised they even asked. It's a little bit icky, but we've dealt with it. Let's push it to the side. That's the whole idea behind that. So let me challenge you again. Will you cut your commission? Let me hear it. Right. No. Any more questions? Now, the next one I have for you is real estate is a risky business. So I would go on to say, I understand why you would ask, but maybe you need to see it just from my side of the table. For instance, I'm the person who has to put up all their money and has to put all their effort and energy in this. And the only way I get a return is if I can bring you an offer that makes you happy. So wherever there's risk, there is reward. And the whole idea behind this is, in this relationship, I'm the one who has the risk. Now, in saying that, another technique I've always liked, if it fits the situation, is what I like to call the cheap car technique. Now, let's pretend for a second your client that you're on the listing appointment with maybe drives a Mercedes or a BMW, a nice car. And what I'd go on to say to them is, I really appreciate the fact that you drive that nice car in the driveway. And I got to ask, why did you choose a Mercedes? And they'll tell you, well, they liked it. Now, let's dig a little deeper here. Is it because you trust it, that you feel confident in it, you feel secure, all of those things? And they'll say yes. And I'll say, I'm curious why you didn't buy a P45. It's the cheapest car in the world. It does exactly what a Beamer or a Benz does. It moves you from point A to point B. But you know there's more to the story than the destination. It's the journey. I'm not saying the other real estate agent can't sell your house at the reduced fees. I'm just saying you're not going to like the experience. And it's really about the experience from where you're going, from where you are to where you're going. Wouldn't you agree? The next one I have for you is mutual lowering. Like, for instance, if somebody asked me to cut my commission from 6 to 5, that's a 15% reduction in my overall pay. I'd be happy to reduce my commission by 1% or 15%, if you want to look at it from that perspective, if they would be willing to reduce the asking price of their house by 15%. That way their house would sell really quickly and I wouldn't have to work really hard. And if they were willing to reduce the price of their house, I'd be willing to reduce the price of my fees. Now, don't be surprised if they say, I'm not going to reduce my house price. And I'd say, no problem. I didn't want to reduce my fees either. And then just move on. The next one I have for you is a mutual increase instead of a mutual lowering. Now, this will only work if there's enough headroom. Let me give you an example. Let's just say, for argument's sake, the CMA says the property's $400,000 and they don't want to pay 6, they want to pay 5. We're talking about 1% here. Now, if there's enough headroom there, I'd say I'd be willing to take the property at 6% and have the right resources to get the marketing to get you the price you want, than to take the property at 5% and not have the resources available. So let me explain to you what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you're going to take less. I'm saying we're going to increase the asking price of the house by 1% or $4,000. Again, this will only work if there's enough headroom, but I want the listing at 404 at 6, then 400 at 5 is really the point I'm trying to make. So we got mutual lowering and we have a mutual increase. The next one I have for you is the commission breakdown. Now, recently I read an article in Inman where somebody was making fun of this technique. And I got to tell you, this technique has worked really well for me. The reason they were making fun of it is because they didn't understand how to deliver it. That was the real issue. You see, again, they were looking at the opportunity from a transaction, not a relationship. And when you have a relationship, you have input into the conversation. You bring something to the conversation, meaning that they're interested to hear what you say. It's not just about doing the paperwork. It's about caring about them and making sure that they achieve their objective. Now, when it comes to a commission breakdown, most of the time, most people think you get to keep all the money. And really what it does is it just kind of lays out where the money goes so that they understand at the end of the day, you don't get the whole 6% or 5% or whatever your fee is. Let's say it was 6 for argument's sake. But what I would typically do is I would sit down with somebody if they were asking me to cut my fees, and I'd want to show them where all the money goes so that they have an understanding of how much I'm actually getting paid. So for instance, for me, my business model was I would give half of my commission to the agent that brings the offer. So in the case of 6, 3 goes to the buyer's agent, 3 comes to me. Now, out of the 3 that I keep, 1% goes to my broker. They have a business to run and administrative people to pay for and photocopiers and all of that stuff that makes our business run. I use another 1% to market their home to make sure their property gets the attention it deserves and we get a premium price for it. The last 1%, the government takes half of it in taxes and leaves me with a 0.5%. Now, when you take a look at a $400,000 sale at a 0.5%, that's $2,000. In their mind, they think they're paying you thousands and thousands of dollars. In reality, there's not a lot left when everybody's got their piece of it. So I've gone through that exercise, laid it out on a notepad, showed them exactly where the money's going, and then gone on to say, you want me to reduce my fees by 1%? At the end of the day, there'd be nothing left for me or my family, and that's what I use to pay my bills with. So again, you can't appeal to somebody emotionally unless you have a relationship. If it's all about a transaction, then it's never going to work. But if people really like you and they respect you and they appreciate your work, the quality of what you do, then you're going to have influence in the conversation. The next one I have for you is a buyer's representative bonus. Now, this has been around from the beginning of time, and I'm always curious about this, and I've never really found the answer. I mean, under the Code of Ethics and the Standards of Business Practice, it says a real estate agent's not allowed to choose a house based on a commission rate. But as long as I've been in real estate, somebody's been offering the buyer's agent a bonus if they'll sell their property. Instead of reducing their fees, sometimes I think the sellers get confused. I'd much rather see them consider an increase in fees and attract more people to the property. Really, when it comes to selling a house, there are 2 groups of people that you need to get their attention. The first one is the public, and the second one is the real estate community. Now, hear my wording on this. Hear my semantics. What I would say to somebody is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, let's play real estate. Let's pretend you were a real estate agent. And there were 4 properties on the market, virtually in the same neighborhood, same price, almost identical. One of them is paying 2%, which would be you guys. 2 of them are paying 2.5%, and one's paying 3%. Now, if you were a real estate agent, which property wouldn't you want to sell? And they point at the 2. And I say, which one would you want to sell? And they point to the 3. And I say, so really what you're telling me is you wouldn't even sell your own house. The point I'm trying to make here is we want to get the attention of the real estate community. Now, in saying that, you got to understand the semantics. I never said real estate agents choose houses based on commission. Never said anything like that. What I said is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, let's play real estate. Let's pretend you were an agent. And I would literally draw 4 stick houses on a pad, put one at 3, 2 at 2.5, and 1 at 2, knowing that they wanted to list theirs at 4. And I would say to them, which property would you sell? And they'll point to the 3. Which one wouldn't you sell? And they'll point to the 2. And what I would say to them is, so you wouldn't even sell your own house. I mean, I'm excited about this opportunity, but let's not tie my hands behind my back. Let's work with the whole real estate community to get them excited. The next one I have for you, I wouldn't personally do because it's not my thing, but at the same time, I've seen it done really well by an agent in my class. It's called the recipe technique. She told us in class that her hobby for a lifetime, she had been in pursuit of the perfect chocolate cake recipe. And she said she used this as a technique to convince her potential sellers to list with her at her full fee. And I said, well, how'd you do it? And she said, well, here's what I would do. I'd say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, when they question me on commissions, I'd say, I appreciate you asking. I understand why you're attempting to ask. But at the same time, I'm not sure if you understand the outcome of what you're suggesting. Let me give you an example. She'd say, for a lifetime, my hobby has been finding the perfect chocolate cake recipe. I've tried everything, she said, and I figured it out. She said, I know exactly what it takes to make the perfect chocolate cake. She would tell you you need the right quality ingredients in the right amount, in the right sequence to create the perfect cake. And she would say, if you change the recipe, you change the outcome. And she'd say, it's a lot like selling real estate. She'd say, let me show you something. She'd take out her chocolate cake recipe. She'd put it right on the kitchen table. And she'd say, now let's go through this list. Let's just say for a second that we wanted to reduce the cost of the cake by eliminating some of the ingredients. And that way it wouldn't cost us as much. She said, so let's pretend just for a second if we were to eliminate baking powder, would the cake cook? And the answer is yes. Would it rise? No. Could we put icing on it? Yes. Would it resemble a cake? Yes. Would you be happy with the outcome? No. That's the same thing with real estate, she would say. She would say, I have the perfect recipe. Now, if you cut my fees, I have to cut my services. Will we sell the house? Yes. Will you be happy? No, you won't be. So do yourself a favor. Use the perfect formula for the perfect outcome. And I always liked that. I thought that really made the point. Now, for me, I don't bake, so obviously I couldn't pull that one off, but I thought it was worth explaining it to you. Now, the next one I have for you is called the menu of service. That's where, and we've all seen this, where you do the bronze program at 4%, you do the silver program at 5%, you do the gold program at 6%. I don't like this technique, but I had to talk to you about it because it's been around forever and there are people out there who would promote it. The problem I have with this technique is everybody wants the gold program at the bronze price. That's what they want. And the negotiations start. Oh, we love all that stuff, but we want it for this price. And then we all fall trapped to doing things that we taking that listing when we shouldn't have at the 4%. But I will tell you a really funny story that I saw, and I saw a lady do this technique and do it magically. In my class in Dallas, there was a lady in my class by the name of Gladys. This was years ago, and Gladys had been in real estate a long time. Gladys was a senior in the business, and she had been in the business like 45 or 50 years. And so you got to imagine how old Gladys was when she was in my class. But in saying that, she was treated like a matriarch. I mean, she knew all the right people. She knew all the money people. She knew the congressmen and the senators, and she knew everybody. I mean, Gladys really had it going on, and she knew real estate from A to Z. So everybody in the class really looked up to her. Gladys came into class one day, and she said she was really excited. She got a 10% listing. 10% for a resale home. And everybody's like, whoa, 10%. And they all said, Gladys, how'd you do it? Now, Gladys was not just from Texas. She was from the Texas-Louisiana border. I want you to think about what that accent sounds like. So Gladys got up to the front of the room and she said, I'll tell you, honey, how you get a 10% listing. She said, I was on a listing appointment last night with a young man. He'd be about 85, she said. Of course, the class broke out laughing. And then she said, and a wonderful evening. We get to the end of the evening and it's time to talk commission. And he says, how much do you charge, Gladys? And she says, I charge 6%, 8%, or 10%. Those are my commission plans. And the gentleman paused for a second at the end of the evening and he looked at her and he said, what do I get for 10%? She says, you get more of my time, honey. And he said, put me down for 10. So she got the listing all signed up and she put it in her briefcase. And she said to him at the end, she said, now I got to ask you, why did you sign for 10%? And he said, Gladys, I want to be the first thing on your mind in the morning when you wake up and the last thing you think about when you go to bed at night. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is you got to ask. You never know. You got to ask. Now, remember I told you about choices. When you give people choices, they'll choose one. If you leave it blank, they won't know what to do. So what did Gladys do? She filled in 6, 8, and 10. Now, a 10% listing in residential real estate, that's like a unicorn, some sort of fable that people talk about. Well, I saw it live, I saw it in person, and I saw it pulled off. Man, I'm telling you, with panache, that lady had it going on. Now, the next one I have for you is the set it aside technique. Do not be surprised when you get to that front door. You're on time. You're looking sharp. You got your coffee, your carrot cake, and your flowers, and your listing presentation. You've done your CMA. You're ready to rock the house. You hit that doorbell right on time. The door opens, and the seller says, I'm telling you right now, mister, I am not paying you no 6%. What do you do with that? I mean, that's the way the evening starts. Where are we going here? I would use the set it aside technique. I'd say, you know what, Mr. Seller, I don't think either of us should make a decision about something as important as your home and base it purely on commission. But I'll tell you what, I'll agree to work for whatever we can agree on, but let's not make that decision until I see what you got and you see what I got. Fair enough? Now, what did I say? Nobody knows, but it seemed to work, and we're at the kitchen table, we're having coffee and carrot cake, and guess what? I'm taking those bricks out of the wall that I told you about. I'm building a relationship, and somewhere by the end of the evening, he's not even asking me about commission anymore because he can't get over how great a job and how cool my presentation was and how good my marketing was and all my print and all my digital. I mean, we're knocking it out of the park here. It doesn't come up again. So the set it aside technique. Now, I'd rather take a few minutes and explain to somebody why I charge them 6% than spend the rest of my life apologizing for only charging 5%. Remember, when you reduce your fees, you got to reduce your services. And when you reduce your services, you reduce the happy level that a client might have. So again, it's just the setup, but I'd rather take a few minutes now and explain to you why I'm charging 6% than spend the rest of my life apologizing for only charging you 5%. The next one I have for you is pay as you go. Now, years ago, I managed an office just north of Toronto. And in that office, I had a lady by the name of Lydia. And Lydia was a rock star in real estate. She sold a lot of houses. She was a big personality, lots of energy. I love Lydia. Now, she had a technique that would help her get her full fee, full service listing signed up, her 6%. And what she would say when somebody would ask her if she would cut your commission, she'd say, well, I could knock it down a point, but you'd have to cover all the advertising. And they'd look at her and say, well, what do you mean? And she'd say, well, there is a cost to advertising and I can reduce my fees, but what I'm going to need you to do is write a check to our company as a retainer, and I'll use that to get the file opened. And what we'll do is at the end of the month, we'll take a look at everything we spent on marketing, we'll reconcile the account, and I'll probably need you to top it up a little bit again as we go along. And people would be like, are you saying that I'm going to pay $2,000 a month towards advertising? And she would say, well, that's what I spend on your property. So I'm going to, if you're not going to give me the money, then you're going to need to pay for it. I mean, at the end of the day, we got to tell people your home's for sale. Well, they wouldn't want to give her the money, but the point was this. She was really explaining to them that all of the products, all the services that she applies, the advertising, the marketing, the photography, the videography, the staging, and I can go on and on, all come out of her pocket. She didn't want a check. She didn't want a retainer. She didn't want to bring that into the office. What she wanted was her full commission, and she was just making the point. Tell you what, you want to pay the expenses? Then we can reduce the fees, but we've got to have some sort of program in place to cover it. So pay as you go. I don't expect anybody's going to write you a check, but it's really kind of making the point that they're going to have to dip in their jeans if you're not dipping in yours. Somebody's got to pay for the staging. Somebody's got to pay for the photography. Somebody's got to pay for the videography. Somebody's got to do the drone shots, the twilight shots. Somebody's got to do all of the just listed cards, the feature sheets, and it goes on and on. It's not cheap, and they need to know this, and they need to see, I'm building a case why someone should pay you. The next one I would tell you is write your commission rate in advance in the listing. So when you're on the appointment and they ask you how much you charge, you tell them, but don't you wiggle, because if you wiggle, they're going to pick up on it. So how do you get your commission? Just put it in there, and when they say, how much do you charge? You tell them what it is, and then you move on to the next thing like it's normal, like you don't even miss a beat. Now, the next one I have for you in my list of techniques is appeal to their morals. Think of it this way. You went in under the assumption you were getting your full fee, whatever that is. Your whole evening is built around that fee structure in all of your marketing. At the end of the evening, if they were to ask you to cut your commission and you agreed, then what was the whole evening about? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. What I would say to somebody at the end of the evening, if they asked me to cut my commission, I'd say, well, if I was to cut my commission now, that would be like I spent the last 2 hours lying to you. My whole system was built around my fee structure. And if I agreed now, the next question you should have is, what else isn't he telling us the truth on? The reality of it is, if I could charge you less, I would. I can't under my business model. And to be honest with you, if I did reduce my fees, that would be as if I lied to you. I don't lie about anything. I think it would be a terrible way for us to start our business relationship built on a lie. Now, the next one I have for you is a slippery slope. Here's the thing about cutting your fees. If you cut your fees, once you step out onto that slope, it gets harder to maintain your footing. How are you going to feel, or how's somebody going to feel when they find out you cut your fees on this property and you charge somebody else more or less down the street? Like, for instance, if you charge this seller 6% and you charge the guy down the street 5% and they find out, this isn't going to work. It's going to put your integrity in question. Here's what I'm going to tell you. You can't have different pricing models for different people depending on how much they pressure you. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What I need you to do is come up with a model based on your services and your profit. Know what your fees are and stick to them. Stick to your guns. It's not about your fees. It's about articulating your services. I need to buy in. What do your things do for me? And what kind of benefits am I going to get by hiring you to help me sell my house, to take over this burden for me? So at the end of the day, when it comes down to fees, it's really about the value, not the price. If you're quibbling about price, it's because you haven't learned how to be a great salesperson. A great salesperson will take a client through the products and services and not just tell them, but explain to them how it's going to have an impact and what kind of effect. It's not about the facts and features. It's about the benefits.